It's Daniel Burnell, Grizzly Medical, and we're here with my friend Mowgli. We just finished up, man, like almost 2 weeks of straight training at Bill Rogers, and then went to the Glock Academy. And we're just going to talk about some of our experiences, and then we're going to talk about how it performed. So one of the biggest things that came about was you see what doesn't and does work under stress and duress, and how it performs under pressure. And so we'll let him speak about his kit real fast. Well, he can explain to you the situations that evolved while we were there, and how we got adapted, overcame, and he shot advanced. Actually, took top shot in the class.
So basically, it was a really good learning point for experimentation. I know there are courses that don't allow or suggest not using their academy or school for a lab. I can't really quote verbatim off of one of them particularly that says that, but it's to the effect that you'll, to the detriment of everyone else's training, you're going to actually have your little lab experiment either blow up in your face, go wrong, slow down the training. Rogers Shooting School has actually been very conducive for trying to find out whether or not different platforms will work. And this, they were actually pretty set on my experiment for using an AK with an optic, and it failed, which was actually something that was a good learning point off of something extremely simple. If you're planning on using a particular gun, the gun itself might work, but if a part on it fails, under speed, under time, and especially for this case, under accuracy and precision, you can be fast, but if you're not accurate, you're definitely not going to be the best. So the biggest learning point from using an AK over there with using Russian parts is that having a buttstock that has to use a tension screw in order to adjust length of pull under recoil is not optimal. And we'll be putting video on about how bad this was after the course. Was actually one thing that I guess mechanically, if I were more mechanically inclined, I would have figured it out just by looking at it before going to the course. But it was something that was rather interesting. After recoil, that screw would loosen and the entire stock would start to wobble. And it wasn't wobble like a flap, like a side folder flap. It was to the point of it would do just a little bit to actually throw accuracy way off.
Okay, in order to go over exactly what went wrong with the buttstock at Rogers, easiest thing for me to do is to actually show it rather than talk through and explain it. The actual design of this, with the adjustment, when I mentioned like length of pull, it's to adjust with this screw in order to loosen it so you can actually make your adjustments. That's how you can actually make this stock longer. But right now there's a little bit of play in the stock and it causes the cheek riser to move and whatnot. That gets accentuated even more under recoil. But if you wanted to tighten this back up, you have this trigger mechanism, you have it set, tighten the thumb screw back up. But under recoil, especially with a 30 caliber, a 7.62 by 39 millimeter that this rifle fires, this will eventually come loose, which it did, and ended up having issues with, like right now this is super solid, but once you end up firing it and getting it under recoil, it'll loosen. And mine actually walked out quite a bit, but now there's this play in it again. And that, even at 120 meters, 150 yards, that's the biggest difference between hitting and missing. My zero was all over the place. Initially, it was 0 to 200 yards, which was way over the zeroing paper, which at Rogers you zero on an 8.5 by 11 inch printer paper. So as long as you're hitting within the middle or top of it, it's fine. When I was firing with this, a higher zero, it's going to go over the target. But even when I started hitting, just with 5 shots, firing 5 shots, barely hitting with any of them. And then once we started proceeding into doing the drills, it just got worse. Obviously, once this starts to move, it's not going to really make a difference how much you end up having that stable of a platform. Up close was fine, but that, even at that distance, it meant a lot. The other thing to address in this that we'll show in a second as well is the actual cheek riser. So for the cheek riser, first you have this as your screw for length of pull adjustment. I'll shut this back again. So you have this nice and tight and taut. But when you want to actually have your cheek for a cheek weld on this, this would be a little bit of shadow. All this is a nice big head for a screw, which that's all you have to lock your cheek riser in place. There's nothing else. That is literally it. It's a piece of metal with a thin covering on it. So padding, you're not really going to get that. If you're looking for something super nice, you're obviously looking in the wrong place. But all you have on this is, you barely see some of these little notches right here that are the actual holes in which the screw can lie within, and it's a little bit rougher to get up into them, but it'll still roll within them. But you want to adjust your cheek height on this? Okay, it's fine. Let's raise it all the way up. Now, if you can see how odd this already looks, you have this flange, essentially, and you put it in to this recessed hole. Get in there. All right, now it's behaving. So nice and flush. So there's your cheek riser. That's from one side. Be like, okay, cool. Yeah, it's nice. It's tight. Now, from the other side, that's all you have as your support, is just that one piece. So if under recoil this comes loose, what do you think's going to happen to that? In order to have a buttstock that will give you stability for a long-range shot, and I understand the whole thing with the history of the AK with, it wasn't made to be a precision gun. It was, by nomenclature, in the 40s, even into the 50s, it was a submachine gun. But if you wanted to have something that would go for accuracy, yeah, a regular stock, a fixed stock, instead of that folding stock, I'd rather take that. But with this particular design, I'm not going to knock on the actual company for design. I will eventually look at using the PT1. I know that they just came out with the new ones that uses a magnet in order to adjust length of pull instead of a screw. That may work.